20 years ago, we saw the Greber issue as a Jehovah's Witness problem. That is, in our cult work, we saw that almost all the so-called cults rejected the core teachings of Christianity. Greber and his fellow occultists were in sync with cult dogmas.
But now these notions are everywhere in our culture, through the Da Vinci Code and popular documentaries and even the propaganda of Islam since 2001 and the so-called new atheists. All of them have caused a kind of a stew of semi-true and sometimes wholly false ideas about conspiracy theories having to do with the Roman Catholic Church, the Illuminati, Freemasonry, Mystery Babylon, and some kind of secret esoteric teachings that somehow the Church has managed to suppress all these centuries.
So how do we cut through this tangle of half-truths and outright false ideas about the history of Christianity? Let's start by taking seriously what the New Testament says about the spirit world, about angels, of light, and of doctrines of demons. We're going to read 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 3 and 4, and then verses 12 to 15. So verses 3 and 4. But I am afraid, lest as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, your minds should be led astray from the simplicity and purity of devotion to Christ. For if one comes and preaches another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or you receive a different spirit which you have not received, or a different gospel which you have not accepted, you bear this beautifully. Verses 12 to 15 of chapter 11 of 2 Corinthians. But what I am doing, I will continue to do, that I may cut off opportunity from those who desire an opportunity to be regarded just as we are in the matter about which they are boasting. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workers, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Therefore it is not surprising if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their deeds.
So is it a coincidence that the claims of Islam and the Watchtower and Greber and other occultists, specifically their slanders about the church and church history, is it a coincidence their claims sound so similar, whether you believe in the reality of malevolent spirits, i.e. demons, or not? The parallels of these revelations of the occultists like Greber to this outright anti-Christian propaganda that is so everywhere in our culture, the outright lies and slander that are part of the cult approach to the church and occultist approach to the church. We have to disentangle all of these notions from each other, starting with the two words Christendom and Babylon. Christendom and Babylon are very different in their nature. Babylon in the Old Testament is not a world empire of false religion. It's not an empire of religion at all. It's not even a system of religion. It's more like a giant organization, a mega city which has outgrown its city limits. It's more like a modern multinational corporation. Its power was not religious, but economic or military. Its religion was not a coherent system of beliefs, but a confusion of conflicting gods, whose cults coexisted, albeit not always peacefully. Just like Egypt, Canaan, Greece, and today's multiculturalism, or melting pot. Empire, by its very nature, has to accommodate diversity. So the churches of Christendom, which have a core of beliefs in common, are very unlike pagan empires, including Babylon, which are polytheistic and religiously tolerant, if you toe the line politically and economically. The cults, including the Watchtower, unfortunately, are more like Babylon and paganism, where everything goes, nothing is stable, men are tossed about by every wind of doctrine, as Paul puts it in Ephesians chapter 4. The cults are a confusion, a chaos of conflicting ideas, but they have common characteristics, as we pointed out in the other videos. Slaves of men. They have common characteristics and views, many of which they share with Johannes Greber and occultism and Islam. These views are antagonistic to the core teachings of Christianity, which all churches have in common. They are epitomized for us in the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed, both of which can fit easily on one page.
So you seem to be saying that to describe some teachings or ideas as Babylonish is to say almost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking the way the Watchtower makes the connection between occultism and Babylonish teachings, say in the way they look at life after death.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to show you two booklets that the Watchtower published about this subject. This one, Talking with the Dead, from 1920. And this one, What Do the Scriptures Say About Survival After Death? And even the timing, particularly of this one, in 1920,
served to distract from the disappointment or even scandal of the false prophecies in the finished mystery, etc.
Yeah, because the people would have just suffered great losses in family members through the war. So they'd be interested in this subject.
So as usual, the Watchtower's timing was perfect. The bereaved families after the great tragedy of World War I were looking for answers. Mm-hmm. And, well, to their credit, the Watchtower didn't want them to go to occultism, but on the other hand, by connecting life after death doctrine of Christendom with occultism by means of the link of necromancy, or talking with the dead as they do here and in the subsequent one. Mm-hmm. By making that link, they were still attacking Christendom with some degree of propagandistic success. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the basic things we have to cure, though, and cure ourselves of, is this tendency to think of the Babylonish teachings as somehow a systematic, a coherent theology of belief, which is somehow shared with all religions but your religion. And Babylon in the Old Testament, as I said before, is not an empire. It means confusion in the Hebrew. So the very nature of Babylon is confusion and chaos, not system, not organization. Only the political and military empire, Babylon, was organizational. But this same word, Babel, in Chaldaic language, meant gate of God. So the Babylonians obviously viewed their system, their empire, as the way to get to God. But the way to get to God, according to the Babylonian confusion, was, well, there's any numbers of ways, because it's a polytheistic system. So it doesn't correspond at all to Christendom. It corresponds more to the cults, the cultic mindset and the occultic mindset, which, as we said before, is a chaos of sometimes contradictory beliefs. So from the standpoint of the pagan, this system, this mighty organization, Babylon, this tower with its top in the heavens, built by men, of course, it was the way to the gods. From the standpoint of the Hebrew prophets, however, despite its elaborate mighty empire and awe-inspiring structures, Babylon was doomed to destruction, for its character was confusion and chaos. Its end, therefore, had to be calamity. Isaiah and Jeremiah were clear. Babylon was to be swept away by the broom of destruction. Babylon's empire was built on sand, not the rock. Israel, as little as it might be in those days, could not perish, according to the prophets, because it was built upon the rock, Deuteronomy 32. And the Church of Jesus Christ, correspondingly, cannot perish, for it too is built on the rock, Jesus Christ himself. And it was he, Jesus, who told us, I am with you always. The Greek is to the end of the days, all the days, even until the end of the age. There's no room in history, therefore, for an apostate Christendom. History, after all, is his story.
Thank you.